Okay, we can have a little look at our firm base. Now you've got a couple of options here. You can use either Correx, which is this sort of plastic corrugated cardboard stuff. It's made out of plastic as opposed to paper. Or if you haven't got Correx, then you can use ordinary corrugated card. You need 2 layers. And all I do is duct tape them together, which covers any sharp edges that you might have, and it just gives it a little bit of extra stability. Now, with your 2 pieces that you've got for covering your, covering your base, you can interface them or you can leave them uninterfaced. This is actually relatively thick, so I'm not actually going to interface these because I think it will be too bulky. Because there will be variations on the size or the depth that this is, depending on what you use, you may have to start with a small seam allowance and then work up to make sure that it fits properly. There is an element of unknown here. So I've done a line that is I've marked a line that's 3/4 of an inch away from one of the short ends on both of my panels. And I'm not interfacing this because it is a little bit thicker. And I'm just going to fold the end of my fabric over wrong sides together to create a 3/8 of an inch hem. And you can't tell that it's wrong sides together because obviously this is plain fabric and it's the same on the back as it is on the front. And I'm going to do exactly the same on the other panel. Then I take both of my panels and lay them right side together with that hemmed edge on both of the pieces at one end. So you want the hems sitting together. Just clip them in place to make sure they don't move. And then clip down the sides for the rest of the fabric just to make sure that it's all staying where it should be. Then from the top edge where you've got those hems, you're going to stitch all the way down along the bottom and back up the other side. And I would start with a smallish seam allowance based on, depending on how thick your card is or your Correx. If you start with a large one, then you have to unpick. If you start with a smaller one, so 1/4 of an inch, you can always go back and increase the seam allowance if your card isn't quite as thick as perhaps Correx might be. So there's a bit of a variable because not everybody will have 3mm Correx, and I don't expect everybody to go out and buy any. Now, if you've got a press that's on a piece of wood, and a lot of people have them set on pieces of wood because it makes them more stable, and then you may not even need the firm base at all. So, foot pedal caught underneath this table. Excuse me while I just unravel the mess that I'm making. Good heavens, that made me jump. How many of you do that? I have the foot pedal caught. I don't very often get it caught under the table, but that's just enough to make you jump out your skin. Right, let's just turn the foot pedal round so that it doesn't get caught under the table. And we'll try that again going up the other side. So just back stitch, and we'll go at a sensible speed this time, shall we, rather than hurtling up the side like we would have done just now. Terrifying. When we come back up the other side and we head towards those folds that we made, you may need to use an awl to keep those folds in. I know they sometimes catch on the side of my needle plate, which is annoying because then they kind of open up when I don't want them to. So I'm just going to hold the folds in place with an awl as my foot goes over them, just so that they stay folded. A couple of back stitches at the beginning and the end, and let's just trim off those threads. Now, the easiest way to see if it's going to fit is to pop your, just got some bits of duct tape sticking out on the ends there, which won't help. This should be a relatively snug fit, but not so tight that you have to give yourself a hernia trying to get it in. So if I just thread the ends, put the ends in, and just give it a little shimmy, I can see that that's going to easily go in there, but it's going to be snug. So I can now trim off those bottom corners at 45 degrees, trim off that little tiny bit of seam allowance at the top there that's going to be a bit bulky, and turn the whole thing right sides out. So it's difficult to see on this because it's the same colour both sides, but this is the same fabric as I've used for my lining, so I wanted my base to be in the same colour, and I've run out of the multicoloured stuff. So pop your corners out using whatever is your preferred tool, whether that's an awl or a pair of scissors or a pokey tool of some sort, or people use chopsticks. I prefer to eat with chopsticks. And we'll just give it a little press to make sure that it's all nice and flat. And then we're just going to pop our firm base inside. Now this should be a fairly snug fit. Getting that first bit in is the bit that's the most complicated. There we go. And then you should be able to slide your base cover over your firm base. Just do a little bit from either side until it's gone right on. Push the base right down into the cover. Now you can, if you've got an extra at the end there, as I have, because I clearly didn't measure that very well either, you can tuck that in, pull this hemmed edge over and slip stitch to close that along that edge. Now I'm just going to do that, and I'm just going to poke those in, that side in. I'm going to bring that over, and I'm just going to clip it. Oh, that didn't want to work. I'm going to clip it with a bigger clip then. It's a bit like wrapping a Christmas present. Clip it and then find your needle and thread. If you prefer to do that, to leave a slightly longer bit at the end and do it with the machine, you can do. But if you've made the effort to hand stitch the binding, then there's no reason not to hand stitch this as well. So making sure that my knot is not visible, so it's inside, I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did with my binding, and I'm going to stitch I'm just doing a little whip stitch here, or you could do a ladder stitch, whichever suits you. To close. It's not awkward to do. It's you've got to be careful that you're not going into the corrix. You're just going through the fabric. So you may find it's easier with a thimble or a longer needle. I always use self-threading needles, and I've only got them at a certain length. I'm not very good at threading ordinary needles. I don't have long ones, but a longer needle is more useful for this. know several of my testers had had their presses on pieces of wood, so didn't need this part. Mine is not on a piece of wood, so I do need this part. So I'm just going to go all the way to the other side. You can see it doesn't take long. And then I'm just going to finish my stitching, tie off my ends and bury my thread within the cover itself. So just a couple of stitches pulled through just to close my stitching. I'll do one more just to be on the safe side. And then take my needle into the fabric and bring it out a bit further up. And then I can use my scissors to just take off that thread, and there are no start and finish areas. Let's just unfold those sides, and you can place your, oh, I've got bits of interfacing in there, and on my hand you can just then place your firm base in the bottom of your press bag, and that gives you a really nice firm bottom, which is something we could all aspire to. And your press bag is now complete. So you've got lots and lots of options. You can add 3 pockets on either side, so I've only put 3, but you could put 3 more on this side. You can actually fit 3 on this part of the gusset if you wanted extra pockets. You can put either a single internal zipper pocket or one on both sides, remembering that you're orientating it so that the zipper heads, when the zipper is closed, are both at the front, which means that you've got much easier access when you've got the press inside to be able to get into the zippers. And the zippers are big, the pockets are deep, big enough to hold, let me just see, I'm not sure if the cam press will fit in there. Yes, it does. So big enough to hold a cam press, or your bags of rivets, or your grommets, whatever it is that you want to take with you or keep securely with your press. So there we are. Your cam press, your press cover, your pie press cover is completed. Thank you for joining me. I hope you'll join me again. I'm sorry it's been a little bit chaotic on occasions. I'm just going to trim off some threads that I found. I hope you really enjoy your press case, and that you're all going to have press cases that are fabulous.